notice has been given. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor? Present. Mr. Chu?
Here.
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Henry? Here. Ms. Mello? Here. Ms. Rivera? Here. Mrs. Severino? Here. Mr. Stotts?
Here.
Mrs. Caden?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we are going to move things around a little bit tonight. We will have our executive session later, at the end of the meeting, excuse me, and we're going to move committee of the whole to after presentations because there are some people here specifically for presentations, and we can have our committee of the whole discussion after that. So we're going to skip down to section 4, presentations. The first one is our CPAG presentation, but before I have everyone get up, Dr. McDowell, can we have that presentation go forward, or what are we doing? Okay, so we're going to wait 60 seconds.
Anybody know a joke?
All right, so we're going to fill some time with some other agenda items. Section 5, future dates and miscellaneous information. We don't actually have any for right now, so moving along. Our next official board meeting will be the end of August. Section 6, annual appointments and approvals. This is just moving on the recommendation to revise the appointment of district compliance action officer responsible for the 504 program for next school year from Dr. Whitehouse to Tracy Taylor.
I'm actually going to need a motion on that.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yep.
So I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Is it all in favor, or do you need a roll call?
Roll.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Oh. The counseling coordinator, the director of counseling.
All right. Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry? Yes. Ms. Mello?
Yes.
Ms. Rivera? Yes. Mrs. Severino?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes.
Thanks.
Section 7, routine board business. We need a motion to approve the minutes of the May 2022 regular board meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Wait, hold on. Right, but section 7 also has contracts.
I can do that.
Okay. So just do the motion
Do the
first,
minutes.
because we don't need to vote that in. Got it. All right, so we have the motion. Do we have the second? Roll call. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
All in favor?
All in favor? Oh, my goodness, this is quite the meeting.
I just need all in
It's the
favor.
end of the school year. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the report of contracts, with which, Beth Ann, am I right? This is just the annual report of contracts to the state, but you can go through it if you'd like, because we have time to fill.
Yes, pursuant to state law, at the conclusion of each school year, but before June 30th, I have to present to you a listing of all contracts that have been executed on your behalf and the value of them. So the report has been compiled and it is attached for your reference. And it doesn't require a vote, it's just for informational purposes only.
All right. Look at that. Now we are ready. All right, so now we are moving back to section 4, presentations. Our first presentation this evening is from Ms. Vesper and Ms. Hegley, an update on CPAG's work this year. So you guys can come up.
That's fine. If you want a mic, that's fine.
I'll put my back to all these people here. Good evening. I just wanted to say CPAG is something that our district has been doing since I arrived here about 14 years ago, Special Education Parent Advisory Group. And with the help of Allie Hegley, there we go, it has really taken off this year. She has been a parent leader like no other, and has really helped us find a parent voice. So I'm going to let her tell you all about some of the initiatives we're hoping to take on. And here she is. Mhm.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, everybody back there. Excuse our back.
So I'm Allie Hegley. I'm the CPAG parent leader, and I'm a Zane North parent, so I've been in this lunchroom serving lunches to our children many times. And I've been working closely with Ms. Vesper and Dr. Whitehouse this school year, mostly since January 2022, to kind of relaunch the Collingswood and Oakland schools CPAG. Like Debbie said, it's the Special Education Parent Advisory Group. So unlike a PTA, we are an advisory group, and we work in partnership with the school district representatives to identify systemic issues related to special education in our district. So our membership is made up primarily of special education parents, but also includes school staff and administrators, and also general education parents, and any member of the community who is interested in improving outcomes for all students. So if you're listening to this and you want to be in our group, all are welcome. It's just that the things we discuss are issues related to special education and disabilities mostly. The vision for our group is on this handout that we have up here, and this was something that was established with the group prior to me joining, but is very nice and concise for what we're trying to do. The Collingswood and Oakland CPAG will be an empowering and inclusive partnership between stakeholders that supports students with disabilities. And I'm really focused on that idea of empowering inclusive partnership and also building trusting relationships. I believe in my own experience as a special education parent that building a trusting relationship with the people that are involved in your child's study team and the development of your child's IEP is the route to success. So I'm here to try to help other parents find that success as well. So the year in review for us, during our 21-22 school year, our group focused mostly on a lot of discussions about identifying opportunities to affect school culture around disabilities and inclusion. We talked to our families and got feedback from them regarding their past and current experiences in the school district. I think that whatever we want to do policy-wise around inclusive education and things like that, I think it really needs to start from a place of cultural change. I think in the last couple of years during COVID, there's been really a groundswell of a cultural movement for disability rights and activism around neurodiversity, and there's a lot more kind of voices that we can listen to out there, so I'm very inspired by that. So that's really what we kind of focused our discussion around as a group. We want to increase feelings of connection in the school communities for families of students with disabilities and learning differences. We want to include considerations and modifications for students with limitations or in self-contained settings in the planning of school-wide events. Provide opportunities for the larger school community to learn how to be more inclusive of those with disabilities, because often students with disabilities are the ones who are kind of expected to learn how to adapt, socialize, fit in with general education peers. So we would love to see that cultural shift to educate all students about how to interact with those with disabilities. And we want to provide the schools that have fewer disabled students more opportunities for recognition to learn about disabilities as part of the diversity in their community. We believe that disability is just another part of human diversity, and talking to kids that way, since we're already doing all this work around SEL, being inclusive, community diversity, making sure disabilities is represented in that. So that's been our focus for this past school year. So for 22-23 school year, we have developed this plan to celebrate 2 weeks recognizing inclusion and disabilities across the entire school district. So CPAG will be partnering with school leaders, staff, and student representatives to develop programming for 2 recognition weeks, and that's up here on the screen. The first one will be in December. It's Inclusive Schools Week. Inclusive Schools Week is an initiative that already exists. It's well established. You can find out more at inclusiveschools.org. It's great because they have tons of resources available, including age-appropriate lessons and recommended activities and things like that. So we'll be looking at what they're doing, tailoring it for our own schools, and celebrating that across all the schools in a consistent way. And then the other one is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. More information about this is at neurodiversityweek.com. Again, this is like a global initiative that's shifting the narrative from your traditional Autism Awareness Week, which is, we're trying to listen to autistic voices and recognize that they would like neurodiversity to be celebrated in this different way. So we would love to build on the existing efforts we have in the school district, celebrating diversity and differences, but center those more current cultural trends if we can. Again, build on the existing efforts. The weeks will teach our students about disabilities and inclusion using age-appropriate lessons and activities. We can utilize resources that are provided at those websites I mentioned. Ensure the activities and the language used is up to date with current disability rights culture. And we'll seek to include disabled and autistic voices in our planning and programming. This is something that's really important for our group. We are still kind of growing in our numbers in CPAG, but we really are interested in our group's voice representing the diversity of our community. So that means representation from different age groups, like different grade levels, all different types of backgrounds, different types of disabilities, and hopefully getting some input from the students themselves that are going to be participating in this. And we want to also, with these celebration weeks, include resources for staff and professional development opportunities in addition to the student activities so that our school communities can learn and grow together. And we've been talking to Dr. Whitehouse about some of those resources, and there's a lot of great stuff out there that I think the staff would really benefit from. So in closing, we hope that these weeks of recognition will create a positive cultural impact in our schools. Empowering students and staff with the tools to better include those with disabilities will lead to better outcomes for all our students and a kinder, more empathetic community. The end.
So, no, I mean, if anybody has a question that, that's a reasonable question to ask of them to answer, sure, go ahead.
I would take off any questions.
Reasonable or not? You'll take it? Okay.
Reasonable or not,
I think a couple quick ones that came up to me, and thank you for the presentation and the work and organizing, and I think you're right. The more that we can have student voice, particularly from this population represented, the better. Are these weeks on our calendar yet? And do we know if that's represented? They will be, okay, that's good. Also just thinking either wherever the board meetings match up with these, either a student representative or somebody from the group giving a presentation to the board on what happened during the week, things like that.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, I've reached out to all the building principals to ask for their support and also to have them suggest staff and students that might be interested in helping with our planning. To be fair, I did that on like the last day of school. So the response has not been overwhelming, but they do know about it.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that the building leaders will be identifying like teachers and students from the school that will help us with our planning. And I think I'm planning on presenting to you guys again probably in January. So, I mean, I'll follow up and get on the agenda, but that gives us time to kind of go through this first, the Inclusive Schools Week, and kind of give a recap of how that went down. And hopefully it's a great success and I get to come tell you all about it. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
My question was if you were going to come back, not that, you wouldn't want to come to was just that if you're going to come back and give us updates, that would be great.
I would love to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, just while I'm here, one other thing we're working on as well is building a little bit of a better bridge between the PTAs and CPAG. So my hope is that I can get a CPAG member to regularly attend their school's PTA meetings, and at this point, probably informally, like act as a liaison, just because, like I said, we want our students with special education, modifications and needs to be thought of as part of this planning for any school event. So we're going to be working on that for next year too. So you'll be hearing from me, I'm sure.
And I just wanted to say, I've been attending CPAG meetings for a while, but since Allie took over, and it's really inspiring to see how much she's pushed the group forward, and we'd welcome any other board members that would like to come too, and yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen with all of it.
Thank you. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
great night.
All right. Now who gets to follow with this spring school bus emergency evacuation drill meeting? Oh, Dr. McDowell, that's a fun one for you after the CPAG presentation. You get to present the,
I think that's just for informational purposes.
oh, so
For
it's not.
CUSAC, twice a year.
It needs to be-
Yeah, the board, just like we do the other drills, it's just a listing of the mandatory bus evacuation drills.
Okay, so this is not actually a presentation.
No.
Gotcha. So then it's Mr. Gersick who gets to follow up the CPAG presentation with the student safety data report.
Good evening, Joseph Gersick, District Supervisor in charge of school safety and student activities. And I was also part of CPAG, and Dr. Whitehouse and Mrs. Vesper did a wonderful job with it, and I thank Dr. McDowell and the board members that were able to log on and participate. It was a great program, and since it was virtual, so many more parents joined and participated, so it was really a great program. So tonight I'll be talking about SSDS, which is the Student Safety Data Systems, which is basically the HIB, Harassment, Intimidation, Bullying Report. And this is a presentation that's given twice a year, and this specific presentation is for July of last year through December, this past winter. So during that time, we had a total of district-wide in Collingswood, 12 HIB investigations, where 4 were determined to meet the definition of HIB. We ran a number of different programs, 15 in total, to help teachers, staff members, and parents, administrators understand HIB, and countless amount of programs that are all listed on the website, from the Kindness Club, secondary and elementary, Second Step, the Read Alouds, all dealing with not only harassment, intimidation, and bullying, but building student relationships and building student culture. One of the things this past January, the Governor Murphy has decided to institute, he amended the school bullying laws and immediately made some changes, which started off with the parents can be civilly prosecuted for not dealing with students that might be brought to court for not dealing with issues that they're related to. Also, almost quadrupled the fines from a first offense of $100 to $500 for a second and ongoing offenses after that. Also, there's a number of things that he instituted for this coming July. Some of the things we've already have in place, which is our timeline for reporting these instances and making sure that they're dealt with in a timely fashion, to things posted on the website, and different programs with training. And I'm in the process of gathering the information from January through the end of June for my next presentation, which will probably be sometime either August or the the board meetings following that. Thank you very much.
Did you, I'm sorry, oh, I saw, go ahead if you had a question.
In terms of the timeline for reporting incidences, how does that work, and what's the timeline between initial report and when it gets reported to the superintendent?
So I took over these official responsibilities in March. Usually it's within 10 days. It has to be completely investigated. And we have a really, really good staff of people that have done a very nice job of working with the students. The counselors get involved along with the administrators. And there's been times where students have been absent, have delayed our reporting, but they make note of that, and I put that on the monthly reports that you receive. If for some reason, student was away for a couple of weeks and they couldn't finish the evaluation, and then it gets to the principal signs off on it, and Dr. McDowell has been signing off on all of them, which is also part of the new regulations where Dr. McDowell has to be included with everything, but we're currently already doing that.
I know we get the copies of these each month. Is it possible to get a year roll-up? I know you said you just came on in March, so maybe you don't have from last year's, but just so we could see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I even have copies from February right now that I can give you.
I think emailing out
Okay.
is fine. I appreciate
I'll
it.
get that from Dr. Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, everyone's email address.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Very good.
Can I ask a
And
quick
then
question?
I had a quick question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Fiona.
You said there were 12 incidences reported and only 4, I think it was 12, but only 4.
Right, 4 that were
determined.
ruled to be meeting the definition.
So I don't know if this is a question for you or if this goes back to the building principals, but of the ones that were not determined to be HIV, what generally happens there? Like, is there
It could be
some
anywhere
follow-up?
from, and it's funny, I was dealing with some issues today, and I always go back into Genesis and I can read, and then sometimes they're not detailed enough. It could be anywhere from 2 students that are talking about a student, didn't mean for the student to hear it, and they did hear it, and it gets reported, and then the students are counseled. Many of the times the parents are called. The incidents, I've read through all the incidences, and the parents have been very supportive. A lot of times counseling. The most severe I saw, which is rare, was a suspension. Some Saturday schools mixed in, but a lot of counseling and working with the children. Living in town, I run through a lot of names that I know, and I'm like, oh, they're knuckleheads. And you know that once they're spoken to about it, I know from the people that I work with, the counselors and the teachers and the administrators, that repeat offenders are rare, very rare. I haven't seen it.
I had a question. You spoke about parents being prosecuted. What was that specifically about? And
So specifically, if a child is brought up for harassing another child, parents have the right to take them to court if they're children. And then specifically in the law, the governor mentioned cyberbullying, which they were really behind on that. They're making sure that parents are held accountable if they don't follow up with they know their children are doing things that are inappropriately, like cyber stalking or tech. We had one issue where a student was texting another student something inappropriate. If a parent doesn't respond to that, they can, parents and the school district potentially could take them to court.
So would that also be that the school district could be taken to court? Like following that logic, if a child is being repeated?
I think if the school district could always be taken to court if we're negligent
Yeah.
and refuse to. I've seen districts where they've refused to follow up on something or turn a blind eye. I think those days are long over. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh.
So you mentioned there was 12 reported, about 4 found it. I think a lot of times parents get confused, like they feel something is bullying, but it's not founded as an HIV.
Right.
Could you explain like what exactly
There's, shoot, I don't have it with me. There's probably 20 different standards where there's 3 categories where they have to at least be positive as being guilty of something in each one of the categories. And the one that always comes to mind is, influencing that student's ability to learn for the day. If they're worried that this boy is going to come after them, or they're worried about something, that's one of the factors that could be. A lot of times, teasing doesn't rise to the level of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. But, it all, shoot, I have it out in my car. There's a category of about 20 different questions, and in each category, they have to meet the criterion of at least one of those.
They're posted on the school website.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's
So if
correct.
you go to the school website, you're able to find that. So if parents were questioning
Right.
whether something.
And also, as part of the legislation, we're going to be updating a parent's guide to HIB, which was mandated, which will be in effect in July.
And that would also be on the website, I would
That's
assume.
correct.
Great.
Yes. That was put out by the Department of Ed recently.
Any other questions for Mr. Gersick? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, next up, we have the presentation of our Vision 2026 strategic plan.
Okay. The arrow keys don't work? Oh, sorry. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're extremely excited to present Vision 2026. What you're going to hear tonight is the embodiment of the last 6 to 7 months worth of work, the collaborative effort, both internal and external stakeholders, and a large team of leaders of internal and external stakeholders that were critical to the development of our plan, facilitated by the W.H. Adams and Associates group. So what you're going to hear tonight is a bit about our process, what we were thinking, and then some targeted recommendations and next steps. So to get us started, Dr. Adams, or Stacy, if you could. You can, so the arrow buttons work back.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here finally together after 6 months, as Dr. McDowell said. I am Stacy Adams. I am with W.H. Adams and Associates. If I didn't get an opportunity to shake your hand and meet you previously, hello to you. And I am joined by my business partner and my life partner, Dr. William Adams. As Dr. McDowell mentioned, it was a 6-month project that we endeavored on when we came in partnership with you, the school district and the school board. I'm going to take just a few minutes to take us down that journey, if you will, and point out a couple of fast facts, as well as a little bit about the process. Number one, we've said it already, 6-month journey. There were over 1,100 participants, at least in the engagement phase of this process. When we talked about it a little bit more in depth, there's probably closer to 1,700 or maybe 2,000 people that were involved at one particular time in the process. And I just want to take a quick minute here. If you either were a part of an interview or a part of a focus group, or you responded to the survey way back in December or February, would you just raise your hand? Were you a part of that? Everyone here? Okay, all right, yeah, I see. All right, so take a look around. We are all part of the process, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, is that this was very much a collaborative effort. Collaboration, internal, external stakeholders, and most importantly, student voice. And just wait until you hear the Portrait of a Graduate Action Plan that was brilliantly facilitated by our principals there, Mike and Jack. Jack's not here today, but Mike, Mr. Ostroff. We're incorporating student voice as a part of the Portrait of a Graduate. And then we have to just say up front, we know it was a long call. There is absolutely no good time to do a strategic plan. It was very challenging at certain points, but I have to give it to everyone on the team, everyone that was involved. There was stick-to-itiveness, there was perseverance, and in particular, when you're closing a school, working through action plans and developing those plans, we're kind of like at the heartbeat of wanting to, how do I look forward when I'm closing up a school, right? How do I make these plans? So I really want to give an extra round of kudos to everyone who was involved in those action plans. So quickly, what we did, we have 3 phases to our framework. First is the engage phase, and that's where we conducted interviews, did focus groups, also had community forum, and then what we also do in this part of the engagement phase is we start collecting data from the district. So you all, some of you here in the room, have supplied data to us, and Dr. Adams in particular did a deep dive into the district data to then offer up what we call our focus stage. And there is where we met with a group of stakeholders, both internal and external, with the advisory committee. That happened in about March, and we did a presentation to the advisory team, about 40 people or so, on average over the course of the 4 meetings that we had that were about 2 hours. About 26, 27 members attended any one of those meetings. But a state of the district was presented to everyone in the advisory committee, and we worked through where we are now, right? In order to go forward, you need to take a moment to reflect and look at where the district is right now. And we married that with the perceptions and then moved into the next phase of our advisory committee, which was developing the vision and the mission and building the framework for the Portrait of the Graduate. And I just want to say, Dr. McDowell will offer that in just a moment, what the results of that were, of those meetings were with regard to the vision and mission and the Portrait of a Graduate. In our experience doing this for about 12 years with dozens of school districts, I have to say the results of your vision statement was one of the tightest, most collaborative, exciting engagements that we had in that meeting that evening. I can't wait to share that with you. And then we talked about objectives. The objectives were outlined, and then they were passed over to the action teams. Now, these action teams, again, were internal and external stakeholders that worked on individual target areas that surfaced from the information that was presented. So that occurred from the mid-April after spring break through May and was completed on June the 2nd. And Dr. McDowell, as well as Dr. Adams, spent some time coaching with each one of the action teams, and the results of that work is what you're going to hear tonight. So, with that, I will, Dr. McDowell, do you want to step up and share the proposed mission?
So in our very deliberate, intentional, but iterative process, it was important for us to circle back to our mission statement to make sure that it was still connected to the work that we know that we needed to do based on all the feedback that we received from our school community. So the proposed mission was refined through looking at some of the feedback that came from all of the data collection, looking at the existing mission statement, and then calibrating as a collective group of internal and external stakeholders in the advisory committee. And where we landed was here. By building on the strengths of our diverse school community, Collingswood and Oakland Public Schools commit to providing an inclusive and supportive environment that inspires and empowers every student. So what you will see a bit further in the presentation from each of the 7 program areas is the embodiment of how that mission manifests in our day-to-day work. When thinking about the vision, The vision is a preferred future state. So our vision or our preferred future state is to foster the qualities necessary for students to serve as contributors to an equitable and socially just community. This was also generated based on feedback from our community stakeholders, based on conversations, both internal and external, and making sure that we were taking direct language from the feedback that we received from multiple sources to be able to cast that vision of our preferred state. When we looked and disaggregated the data, there were 7 core themes in which we organized our work. The first being a portrait of a graduate. The second, programs, pathways, and proficiency. Social, emotional, and mental health. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Student voice and student life, which will be a through line across all 7 areas. Communication, and then ultimately infrastructure, facilities, and finance. So we were very fortunate to have 14 extremely strong leaders, both internal and external, representing diverse experience, diverse assignments, diverse education, helping to lead the way. So there were 2 co-chairs for each of the 7 teams. So leading us in our portrait of a graduate was Dr. Michael Ostroff and Dr. Jack McMullen. Dr. Ostroff is the proud principal of Collingswood High School, and Dr. McMullen is the principal of Collingswood Middle School. What you will see is that there were educators as well as community members, but the most important component, and I'm going to let Dr. Ostroff share with you, was that we had a large group of direct student participation. Dr. O, would you like to share, or would you like for me to take it over? Either way, I can run the slides and you can just talk to us.
Thanks. Hi. Good evening. Nice to see you. So this was great. Dr. McMullen and I took an opportunity to recruit some kids through some of our clubs, activities in the school that we thought we'd get a diverse group of students. We held a couple meetings, really provided the kids an opportunity to give us some feedback by using kind of a post-it note model where every kid will have a voice. Even those that might be shy in the corner have an opportunity to write on the post-it note, put it up on the walls to answer kind of 3 big questions that we took one at a time. So following up on each of those questions, took an opportunity to kind of further clarify and have some dialogue with the students to get their feedback in a little bit more of that voice. So this is where we landed. The original advisory committee had come up with 6 competencies. They morphed into these 5 with the what we call descriptors underneath. So these are the 5 areas where we landed from both the kid and adult feedback that we are happy with. So we had a couple goals and action steps, but the goals to update the portrait of a graduate and make sure that it is integrated its competencies across all of the action steps of the strategic plan, as well as provide suggestions across that strategic plan for how the portrait of a graduate is seen, marketed, and experienced across the school district. And we had a student prepare a visual. We think we'll tinker with this a little bit more, but this is the outcome of all of the work. And then Ms. Reagan Riley, class of 2022, put this together during the process.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ostroff. So programs, pathways, and proficiency was led by our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Jen McPartland, and our District Supervisor of STEM, Mr. Sean Kendall.
Hi, so thank you, Dr. Jen and I led the Programs, Pathways, and Proficiencies team, along with Windsor Yamamoto, our Supervisor of Data and Performance, as well as several faculty and staff, and a couple great community members that really contributed quite a bit. So our primary goal here was to create equitable opportunities for all Collingswood, Oakland, and Woodland students to reach their full potential through a whole child approach. And Through this process, we identified 5 secondary goals and objectives, which basically are through building collective teacher efficacy, we will move all students to academic proficiency in literacy, math, and science, increase the scope and depth of programs that provide life, character, and citizenship skills for all students, prepare students for post-secondary success by developing robust college and career pathways, increase graduation rates for all student groups by 2% yearly, and finally, to promote evidence-based practices to accelerate learning and to meet the needs of all students.
So I'm going to go through all of our action steps. So action step number 1 was about increasing academic proficiency. And our district has set some goals for this, including the development and continued work alongside professional learning communities. And this year in particular, we're going to really hone in on the concept of collective teacher efficacy with some training particular to the guru of this, Miss Jenny Donahue. We are going to continue to use the Connected Action Roadmap model, the CAR process, to develop our curricula. And we are going to change our discussion points from best practices to responsive learning practices, which promotes a more equitable opportunity for every student. We are also going to identify academic improvement goals in the areas of ELA, math, and science, because these are particular standardized assessment areas. In terms of action number 2, reinforce life and character skills, we actually had a very robust section here, but it really overlapped with the team that did SEL. And so we removed those components in service of the overlap in the work that they had done. But we did want to make sure that we are increasing and expanding opportunities for students to develop life, character, and citizenship skills through service, and we have some pretty specific goals for that. Increasing graduation rates, as we mentioned, in every subgroup, critical to our overall success as a district. In action 4, post-secondary success, this is another area that has evolved over time, particular to discussions this year and throughout the next course of the time through 2026. We really want to consider our career and technical education programs. We also want to make sure that we have pathways for students for jobs outside of the high school career. We are honing in on the industry-valued credentials, dual credit options. We have some already in place, but we really would like to increase this area. Determine curriculum needs to support any of our new college career and pathway programs, and ensure our career pathways and program options support the graduation rate goals. So pretty robust there. And action 5 is about our professional learning. We will be continuing our discussions about visible learning and the development of assessment-capable visible learners. In terms of accountability, we highlighted some of the areas that we will look to for data to understand how we are growing. Standardized testing data is one indicator that we do use to support the knowledge of our students and understand where we're going in terms of instruction. But even more important, our benchmark assessment data, CT program completers, survey results for PLCs and other work that we're doing, graduation rate data, which we report on yearly, post-secondary plan development. Every student will walk out with a post-secondary plan, and that is part of our goal, whether it's career, college, military, otherwise. We want to make sure that everyone leaves with a clear pathway, and the completion of the community service hours.
Thank you. So if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that the social emotional health and well-being of our students is critical and directly related to their success in school and many times out of school. So we wanted to make sure that this was also an area that was elevated and that was well thought of. We had 2 fabulous leaders that helped lead us through this, Dr. Elizabeth Whitehouse and Mrs. Debbie Vesper.
Dr. McDowell. We had a really large and active group on our action team, so we were really excited about the interest level from our staff and our community. And our amazing student representative, Abby Walker, who has been such a strong advocate for student voice, and she really gave us some great feedback, so we really appreciate her participation, along with Jessica Tai, who is a parent in our community and also a mental health professional, so we valued her input as well. We had a lot of participation from our faculty and staff at all levels, as well as Jen Bolden, the Oakland School principal, who participated with us. So we really feel like we got a lot of feedback about our SEL and mental health initiatives, and that it really represents a wide range of how people are feeling and thinking in terms of the support that we need. So our primary goals were identified for us by the larger group as part of this process, and then we tweaked them a little bit and added some secondary objectives. So one of the things that we've recognized in our district before the pandemic started and that were exacerbated during the pandemic were student, family, community stress. So everybody is feeling a lot of stress for various reasons, and it's resulting in some similar outcomes, even if the reasons for that stress are different. And then an issue that was identified for us as well was the lingering impact of the pandemic. So we are starting to come out of all of the restrictions, and we're seeing some effects from some of the things that families and community members and our students experienced during that time. And so while our restrictions are easing, we don't want to ignore the effects that some of that time had on our various community members. So our goals were to make sure students feel safe throughout the day, to talk about things they need to talk about, to work through issues in a number of areas. And we also want to make sure our community is supported with the resources that they need, whether it be through our wraparound services that we offer through Jefferson and First Children, which are now available at the elementary and secondary levels, or if it's something else that's beyond what the school has the capacity to address. We still want to make sure that families have resources and are connected to the resources they need, and remove some of the barriers that sometimes exist for families to access those resources.
So what we did was we decided there were 3 distinct areas that we should break down and look at. We for sure needed to look at the student needs, and what we're doing already is we've already started to integrate social emotional learning at the elementary level in a regular way. And we determined that we would integrate more SEL into the secondary level and increase what we're already doing at the elementary level. We also determined that as a group, the faculty and the staff are in need of more support. So we determined that offering faculty counseling groups, we would host them and offer that as a separate entity as compared to just student support groups. And we would continue to organize more events where they can feel appreciated ongoing throughout the year as compared to just perhaps 1 week of the year where we appreciate them. We also are going to talk about creating a library of resources at each of our school sites so that parents and staff, but parents and students can borrow resources, have community resources and books available to them that they can take home with them and use as a family and at a time in their home when they feel they need it most. There are some other things that we should also be doing, using some screeners to ensure that everyone is at a level of safe mental health. Excuse me. And continue to survey our families. Even though the pandemic is ending, so to speak, we need to continue on and ensure that we're providing our families with the right kinds of resources. And we need to ensure that our attendance is increasing as things are progressing in a positive way. We need to ensure that our conduct is decreasing, and we want to make sure that our resources are being used. If our resources aren't being used, we're not either promoting it the right way or giving people the right resources. So we just have to ensure that we're looking at everything and providing the right kinds of things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are very fortunate to be members of an extremely diverse school community, both socially, racially, ethnically, linguistically, and this core topic has continued to come up. So the concept around diversity, equity, and inclusion is just part of the collective DNA of both of our districts. So we were very fortunate to be led in this area by Principal Doug Newman of the Sharp Elementary School and Mr. Zach Wright, who is an educator with the Relay Graduate School of Education and a elementary school parent.
Evening, everybody. So our group was small but mighty. So we had a collection of Sharp Elementary folks as well as members of the high school and middle school. So we had kind of a range of elementary as well as secondary, both in school as well as out of school. And where we wanted to begin was really diving into who we were. But before we got there, we wanted to come up with our goal. So we wanted to really further integrate diversity, equity, inclusion concepts into our culture by dismantling negative stigmas between elementary school communities, prioritizing sustainable pathways to diversify our teacher pipeline, as well as administrative pipelines, and developing cultural competencies of teachers and administrators. So what we're really trying to tackle are some uncomfortable truths that we have, and trying to do so in a very tangible way. To do that, what we're going to try to do is creating activity days to integrate and build connections between the elementary schools as a way to mitigate stigmas that arise when they come into middle school. We are trying to maintain and expand teacher outreach into Woodland and Oak Lynn to build relationships so that it doesn't just happen as soon as they come into schools. Professional development aligned with the academic team to ensure development of teachers' cultural competencies, as well as really creating pipelines to diversify our teacher and administrative workforce. Here are some of our action steps. So our first action step is a pen pal relationship, which we're going to be calling Panther Pals. And what this involves is an inter-elementary school connectivity program designed to foster relationships across communities. What was interesting was that we heard about a lot of stigma in the middle school that exists when elementary school students come together. As a parent, what's interesting is that you don't see that on the Little League field, for example, right? So these connections are possible and they happen. We just have to create the avenues for them to happen. So that's one way. We also want to create, for more of the secondary level, peer leadership programs, where middle and high school connectivity programs, including senior leaders, facilitating and welcoming in incoming fifth graders from all elementary schools, Collingswood, Woodland, Oak Lynn, to ensure that there is that sense of belonging, that you do belong here. Professional development series, again, working in tandem with other strategic action teams to ensure that we are developing our teachers' cultural competencies, and we are pushing all of our teachers to be truly anti-racist practitioners. We will be dividing this into one for elementary and one for middle and high school to ensure that it is developmentally appropriate for our students. We want to diversify our school district educator pipelines, and we're going to try to do that in a couple different ways. One is to create partnerships with schools of education to get teacher residents into our classrooms. So what that would mean is a individual who is learning to become a teacher and get their certification spends a year in Collingswood schools, understanding Collingswood schools while learning how to become a teacher with the goal of them becoming a future teacher. These teacher residency programs are known nationwide as being a strong lever for diversifying our teacher pipelines. In addition to that, what we're also trying to do is work on a dual admission program for our seniors in high school who may want to become teachers themselves, to get some education credit so that they will go off and then come back and teach. That is based upon many examples, but West Philadelphia High School has many teachers who went there, and it's a very powerful thing to make happen. And then lastly, we want to expand our educator connections in Oakland and Woodland. As was told to us, very often students from Oakland Woodland show up at school, and it's the first time they're creating relationships with teachers in those buildings. So one way to make sure that the relationship begins earlier is through a program developed by Nate Ingram, the REACH program, getting teachers into elementary schools and really creating that relationships before they come into school. We want to be truly accountable. DEI is one of those things where you can talk about it and nothing happens. So one of the things we really want to do is see a statistically significant decline in disciplinary disparities. While Collingswood not necessarily an outlier, the disciplinary disparities for Black students, Latinx students, and students with special needs, the disparities there are wider than the disparities that exist in the United States average and the New Jersey average. So we have significant work to do. We want to identify 2 to 5 diverse candidates by the end of next school year. We want to see a quarterly collection of qualitative data on school climate and belonging from students and teachers. We want to know how they feel in school. One of the things that came up was the sense of belonging. We want all of our students to walk into buildings knowing that that is actually where they are wanted. We want our Panther palpitation rates to be high, and we want to have an annual increase of students who are interested in becoming the next generation of Collingswood educators. Thank you.
Thank you. So the through line for all 7 of our areas was how do we create an environment to elevate student voice? Leading us through this important work is Mr. Dan Wayland, as well as Mr. Matt Jenna.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell. We also had a small but mighty group. Matt and myself were joined by several very passionate educator colleagues, as well as 2 community members and a couple student focus groups. As Dr. McDowell mentioned, this was the through line throughout the plan, and we had 3 goals, with the landmark one being that our first discussion centered around that anecdotally we have honored student voice in Collingswood, but we haven't had the actual action and plan to actually take that voice and have them have an impact. So, primary goal being to increase opportunities for student influence on school climate, culture, and overall school life. This was identified from the survey, which one of the most predominant answers was to empower students with voice and choice in their educational journey. Secondary to that was, as was just mentioned in the DEI, having students feel welcome there. Looking at our middle school and high school and our 3 towns, and how can we increase that sense of belonging among students from all 3 towns. And then throughout that, to create a culture for students to serve and contribute to an equitable and socially just community. The 2 actions that focused on this student voice action team were to really tap into some of our clubs and extracurricular activities, find student leaders, also tap into those students that are not necessarily involved, and form this student action team that will meet very regularly, will give their input, which will then be reported out to administration to see if the action can be put into place. Along with that, getting used to taking advice from students can be a bit of an adjustment. So connect with the curriculum department, look for opportunities to weave this into professional development in terms of honoring student voice. Presenting those results to the district leadership team, again, to see if there's feedback and if there are things that we can implement. Grade band meetings, as well as principals giving teachers opportunities to share how student input's being used in instruction. Speaking to our secondary goals, that welcoming transition to high school. We have some shadowing days. We looked at what we have. How do we make that a little bit more robust? So between Woodland and Oakland, increasing our shadowing to 3 times a year, and inviting them to a special event, possibly a play or an athletic event, getting them some swag, again, trying to bring that process of belonging to them prior to them stepping into that building. And then action 4, we looked at some of our opportunities that we've had in the past, senior signing day and an alumni forum. Senior signing day is where the juniors would come down and see a plethora of different avenues that our seniors are taking post-high school, and get to celebrate those. And then the alumni forum, with students come back, again, from all walks of life, and share their experience with current juniors and seniors. In terms of accountability, looking at 3 metrics, an annual % increase in student participation rates overall between clubs and extracurriculars, a % increase in attendance if they are feeling like they belong, if they are looking forward to that new opportunity that they've joined, and then a monthly decrease in disciplinary referrals. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next area of communication was led by two of our leaders. One, our communications consultant, Lori Perlow, and our district supervisor of humanities, so literacy, social studies, and the arts, Mr. David Oliveri. I will read for them. Okay. So as you can see, a nice mix of administrators, individuals representing elementary, middle, and high school, as well as technology and health services. In addition to two of our community members, found that this work needed to speak to the sophistication of the moment, but also the diversity within our community. We're in a, as we shared in the onset, we're in an extremely diverse community. Arguably, we have 5 generations of community in this space at the same time. And each of those 5 has a distinct communication style, a way in which they send, receive information. So we wanted to make sure that we were, first of all, acknowledging that there are differences between the different generations and the need for us to be more responsive in our communication, to be able to reach those 5 different generations. Primary goal is to develop and implement a comprehensive communication plan with a focus based on the resources. So historically, most school districts tend to struggle in this area because we get caught up in a lot of some of the other areas. We want to focus on academics, we want to focus on family and community engagement, but we sometimes miss that in order to engage families, you have to be better at communication. So we wanted to make sure that we were elevating communication because in our data collection, it was communicated as an area of growth and also an opportunity. So some of our secondary goals is to conduct a thorough review of the existing forms of communication to also determine, are they being utilized and at what level, and are they effective? Gathering input more frequently through the use of surveys and focus groups in order to make sure that we are touching base with our community to make sure that information that's going out is appropriately being received, and if not, what are ways that we can pivot or course correct so that there are not large gaps in communication. Also, reviewing our branding. We want to make sure that when we're sending information out that individuals know that it's coming from Collingswood or coming from Oak Glen. We also wanted to make sure that we're going to the places where people already go to. Historically, we have shied away from social media because there is a natural reservation that sometimes social media can be misused. But this is where people are. So we're going to have a concerted effort and a formal communication plan that includes targeted usage of social media because we want to make sure that we're communicating to each of those 5 groups. In addition, crisis is that nasty word that we hear about in education, but it's a necessary component to make sure that our students and our staff are safe. And then more specifically, making sure that we have very targeted protocols and practices to ensure that we're communicating in a timely fashion to our families and to our community members. We know that we're going to be digging into this. We're going to be also partnering with our local law enforcement and first responders in order to make sure that we're all on the same page within the school community as well as both boroughs. Some of the action steps associated with communications. Number 1 is looking at existing communications. So gathering all of the information. What are all of the mechanisms that we have? We know that there are some individuals that need something in their hands. We also know that there are some individuals that use their phones. So we want to make sure that we're looking at what are all of the entry points in terms of communication so that we're appropriately getting our, not just our message, but also making sure that information is easily accessible to all of our community. Gathering input, which would be action number 2. We want to make sure that this is a reciprocal conversation, that the school district is not just talking to the community, but that we're talking with the community. And in order to do that, we have to have more opportunities to engage in two-way dialogue. Branding. It's important that when information comes, you know where it's coming from, you know where to look, you know how to access that information. So we're going to make sure that the look and feel of correspondence that's coming out is clear and consistent so that families and community members are not confused when we're putting out information. In addition to the social media, review social media trends, review all of the mechanisms, and then striking the appropriate balance between those 5 different groups and making sure that we're going to the places where people are already attending. And finally, crisis communication, reviewing our existing procedures, making sure that we are putting the health and safety of students and staff first, always, but also making sure that we have very close, tight connections and communication with our law enforcement and our first responders in the event of a challenging or negative circumstance. And making sure that we have a very succinct and very complete crisis communications plan that is revisited on a regular basis to make sure that it meets the moment. And then also making sure that we're communicating not the specifics or the details of crisis planning, but making sure that we're giving enough information for the community to understand that the needs of their children are being put first. Accountability. One of the areas that we're going to be looking at in terms of accountability is evaluating the utilization of our technology department. We also want to make sure that we're using our key stakeholders in the development of these chains of communication. We also want to make sure that we're being responsive with the survey data and share that information publicly so that we're all on the same page, because I believe that we all have a vested interest in the safety and security of our children. And then ultimately, the same with those focus groups. So when we come together, it's one thing to collect data, but then what do you do with that information? We want to make sure that we're sharing that information when and wherever appropriate. Implications for our stakeholders. We know that due to the shutdown, that access to information is critical. And we know that individuals are dialed in, but they're dialed in a lot of different places. And we want to make sure that we're going to each of those places. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that we are not missing opportunities to make sure that we're reinforcing these concepts around communication, sharing, and transparency, both at the campus level and at the district level, and making sure that we're all consistent in our messaging. And finally, the last group, infrastructure, facilities, and finance. This was led by our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, Beth Ann Coleman, and our District Supervisor of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Keith Higginbotham.
All right, we had a really large group, and there's probably about 8 people who couldn't attend the meetings. Many faculty and staff, some coaches, some of our drama department, music department, and school community members, Collingswood and Oakland. So the primary goal of the infrastructure, facilities, and finance group is to analyze and compare the classroom, athletic, and extracurricular space challenges through multiple lenses in order to create and maintain safe and equitable learning environments responsive to evolving student needs and our school district capacity. So what did we do? We action steps. Review completed demographic studies, including birth rate cohorts and 5-year enrollment projections. Conduct a detailed site-based analysis of all of our schools to identify any and all unused or underutilized learning spaces. Analyze and compare facilities needs based on educational, administrative, support, and athletic spaces. Consideration needs to be given to an awful lot of things, but our current attendance zones and how we assign children to elementary schools in the district, our current facility needs and our limitations. Most notably, some of our buildings are not ADA compliant because of their age. Appropriateness for educational programs, supports, and activities. Appropriateness and ability to address our equity concerns. Grade level options and configurations. Facility alignment to short-term and long-term instructional needs of the district. And administrative needs. Conduct a detailed site-based analysis of all of our outdoor spaces to identify opportunities to expand learning spaces. Conduct a long-range facility assessment and evaluation to include current needs and then 5, 10, 20 years out. Investigate potential buildings and/or land opportunities for lease or purchase, local businesses, nonprofit educational facilities. Ensure that all of our district facilities are handicap accessible. Ensure all district facilities are up to date in safety and security enhancements. Ensure that all of our district-owned athletic facilities meet the recommended NJSIAA and CAA standards. Ensure adequate office space for all of our employees equipped to support their work and productivity. Secure updated estimates for the following potential projects that came out of all of this discussion. The athletic complex, the auditorium in the middle school, parking, enhanced security.
Thank you.
Yep, that's it.
That's it. So as you can see, we had a wide range of not just stakeholder input, but stakeholder development. We wanted this to be a very iterative process. So the process around the data collection, so that was over a duration of time. The development of targeted action plans, which the board will be reviewing for the next 4 to 5 weeks, sorry, folks, are more detailed, where they get into the specificity of specific individuals that are responsible, specific metrics, and fiscal resources. So where do we go from here? So the next phase is the board will get a series of recommendations this evening from Dr. Adams. The board will also be provided full access to the final report, which is about a 35-page technical document, in addition to each of the 7 action plans, which goes into specificity by program area. We will then circle back in our committee meetings, and our goal is to continue to collect feedback from our board members and to receive approval for this during the October board meeting, August board meeting, for us to be able to move forward with some of the services actually launching in September, but many of them moving forward throughout the first semester. And then some of the work, especially work that requires any level of financial investment, would be at the forefront in our budget development planning, which begins in October. One of the things that's extremely important to note is that this was all voluntary. So all of the individuals that came forward, they volunteered their time. So as a district, as a Board of Education, we're extremely thankful to all of the individuals who participated in this process. But we have an additional ask. In September, we will be going to every campus to speak with students, parents, faculty. We'll also be establishing some community meetings because we realize that not everyone within our community has children that attend the school. So we want to make sure that because this is a community initiative, that we're also going to the community. So for the month of September and October, we will be going into each of those spaces, going more into detail in more of a community forum style, in person, to make sure that the community understands and is able to embrace and participate. Because when we shift into implementation, it will require the entire institution rolling our sleeves up and moving the work forward. So it won't just be, we don't lead through mandates, we don't lead through one-pagers. We actually lead by coming together as a community and figuring out what are appropriate steps that are reasonable and manageable to be able to meet the moment and to meet the needs of each and every one of our students. So that's kind of the 50,000-foot level. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Dr. Adams, if you'd like to come up and share with us some of the highlights and then some of those recommendations. Do you need me to do anything here, or? Okay, you don't need this? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell, and thank you to the Board of Education for Collingswood, and if you convey to Oakland as well the opportunity to work with you. Recognizing how long you've been sitting and listening, I just want to share with you a couple of things in terms of next steps and where we need to go from here. As Dr. McDowell said, the board will have, both boards will have this information, and at your August meeting, we would hope that you would discuss it further and actually move forward with many of the recommendations. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the action plans you saw tonight were Cliff Note versions. When you see the detailed versions, you will see the metrics, you will see the people responsible, the timelines, and we do know that over the summer there'll be some more work in terms of budget process. As Dr. McDowell said, much of the work can begin and needs to begin in September, but a lot of the budgeting process for the following year will be the 23-24 budget for the following year for some of the things that will require resources behind it. There were 10 recommendations that we made for the boards to consider, and they're in the executive summary. I'm going to highlight a couple of those. We also gave 10 areas for consideration, and then we noted 5 areas of challenges. We're not going to go over all of them, so that's the good news. What I would like to do is just highlight what we would be asking the boards to do. First of all, the first thing is to adopt the mission and vision at your August meeting, and to move forward with the revised mission, which is really a modification of what you already had, a little more succinctly presented, which shows what you do, how you do it, and who you do it for. And the vision, as Dr. McDowell said at the beginning, where you want to take the districts. Second thing would be to adopt the action plans, and these action plans are the first 2-year action plans. These are what they call biannual action plans. We would ask that as part of that, you take the responsibility that quarterly you look at those action plans as governing bodies and as community members. And at the same time, we recommend that at each board meeting, look at one objective or one primary goal and get an update, because strategic plans that sit on the shelf do nothing. And this is one way to keep it out front. We also suggested at the conclusion of the first year, based on those quarterly reviews, you modify the objectives. And at the same time, for those objectives that were not pursued at this time, look at them. Maybe it's time to move those forward. That may happen at the end of the first year, or they may not happen until the end of the second year. But keep it out front. To embed the portrait of a graduate in a district culture is critical, and it can be used as a starting point to move forward. So we recommend that as you look at that portrait of a graduate, you can embed from preschool forward, what are the academic levels? What are the basic skill levels? What are the social and emotional and mental levels that students should have when they exit those grades to get to that portrait of a graduate? That would also help as you look at equity for all students, taking students from where they are and giving them the supports they need to get to that portrait of a graduate, no matter where they come from, no matter what kind of background they have. So that portrait of a graduate can be the impetus to move things forward. Communication plan that was just mentioned, critical, and that's one of the first things that should be done. Get that communication plan in place so that in September, when you go to those schools, when you go to the community with the strategic plan, you're ready to launch. And something we've said, 2 districts, 1 mission, 1 vision, 1 voice. Now, you may get there different ways in each of those districts, but this is a way to do it and a way to move forward. Each of those 7 action plans that were presented are intertwined. There are 4 of them that can't stand alone. They all have to be connected. So we recommend that as you work together, those plans are integrated and together. And that started to happen, that started to germinate as we got to the end of the process in terms of the action plan development. Obviously, professional development is going to be impacted by the strategic plan. And that was mentioned earlier. So that becomes one of the recommendations. The strategic plan should drive professional development. Certainly, as you move forward and allocate resources, look at the strategic plan, set them there. And then finally, the key to success certainly is the level of commitment to continue to move forward. Don't put it away, move forward. You'll see in the executive summary the other areas for consideration, and you also note some of the challenges. It's easy to say we like the way things were, and we know there's some silos that have to be broken down, but the strategic plan is a great way to get to the next level for every child and to provide equitable access for every child to succeed in Collingswood and Oakland. So thank you for the opportunity to work with you, and certainly good luck with the next steps. And I know Dr. McDowell and our team are going to be in concert this summer as you work forward and refine and as you get to the next level. Thank you.
So first, I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. McDowell, and because he does this all the time, but to everyone who came today to present to us and all of the work that went into creating those goals and objectives and accountability measures. We really appreciate it, and I think it will speak to the potential success of the plan that so many people were involved in it and have a stake in making sure that all of the recommendations that Dr. Adams just laid out are actually taking place. So again, I know Dr. McDowell already thanked everyone, but I'm going to do it one more time because without everyone's participation, it wouldn't have happened. So moving along, because it's already almost 8 o'clock, so thank you for that. I think I was going to at first say we should ask questions, but then I feel like as long as the board is okay with that, Dr. McDowell kind of laid out that we would have the opportunity to do a deeper dive into the various areas and have opportunities for more discussion later on. So is that okay with everyone, or is there something that somebody wanted to say? Just check. Go ahead. Put your mic on.
My question was, will we be able to talk with the leaders of the action groups for when we start digging into their plans and have questions? Will we be able to connect with them? Okay.
Okay, good. That'd be great.
I can speak for 13. Zach, will that be okay? All right. Okay. Then the answer is
Thanks,
yes.
Zach. Yeah, I was going to say, we'll just ask him separately if we need to. Okay, so we had juggled around a little bit earlier, so now I'm going to move us back briefly to Section 3, which is Committee of the Whole. Do I have a motion to go into Committee of the Whole? And a second? Okay, this is going to be a fairly brief Committee of the Whole discussion. I asked Ms. McPartland if she would actually participate in it with us, so I don't know if maybe you want to come sit next to Mr. Chu since there's an open seat. Then you'll have a mic and that'll be easier and you won't be awkwardly standing in front of all of us. But what I wanted her to do is there have been some updates to the curriculum planning process that will, I think, speak to some of our questions, the questions that the board had about how that happens, particularly over the summer and moving forward. So if you could just share with us, Ms. McPartland, what those new developments are, and then if we have any follow-up questions, we can ask them. Thank you.
Sure. So basically, as many of you are aware, typically curriculum occurs on a 5-year cycle. And we have a number of curricular areas that need to be developed over the course of this summer and throughout the 2022-23 school year. Some of those areas are particular to updates in New Jersey state standards. The state did put a moratorium on some areas due to the pandemic, and then there were increased areas of expectations for this September. In particular, we know that there are mandates for social studies, health PE, world language, and then there are some other areas that need to be addressed, including climate change initiatives, and then there are other particular standards that I want to highlight that are part of every curriculum development process because they're meant to be more of an interdisciplinary approach. The thing that I want to highlight is alongside all of the standards updates from the Department of Education, there is also a new curriculum development process that we have been going through under the CAR model. And all of our teachers were trained with this. Actually, our ELA departments were trained prior to the pandemic because that's when we started this CAR process. And then in September, all of our teachers were trained in the CAR model and the framework that is associated with it for the curriculum development phase. One of the components of this is having a strong professional learning community as well to review curriculum that's been developed and to have ongoing discussions so that curriculum is no longer a silo and it's an ongoing reflective process. So there are a number of areas. Dr. McDowell and Ms. Coleman are aware when we did the budget development process, I was pretty clear about the fact that this is a really robust curriculum budget that we have never had before, but it was due to the number of standards as well as this ongoing process of revision that really kind of hit home this year in particular, and a lot of that does have to do with the last 2 years of the pandemic and what was accomplished, and also in terms of the state guidance. But for every curricular area, the first thing that we need to be aware of is that everyone will be switching to the CAR model, and that framework will form the curriculum development phase. The other thing we should be aware of is that we have purchased a new curriculum development platform called Chalk. So over the course of time, we have been looking to phase out our existing platform. We moved into using Google Drive and Docs as a curriculum development process. But one of the things that we found is that it was cumbersome in two parts. One is that there's little access to the actual standards without looking them up and bringing them in. There's no ability through Google Docs to really analyze where our standards are and to understand where we fall short and making sure that we're addressing all the areas we need to. And then also want to mention the fact that just in terms of like collaboration accessibility, those things can be a little bit cumbersome through Google Doc. So we sought to look for a platform that also provided the public-facing interface that we need for curriculum for the public. So in every area, in addition to updating the curriculum that is existing or revamping, whichever it may be, every person will be putting it into the CAR framework. Every person we had our teacher training today for Chalk to use the new platform to understand how that works, will evolve and the work behind it. In addition to ensuring that the new career readiness, life literacy, and key skills are infused into every single unit, to ensure that the new computer science and design thinking standards are infused into every unit, to add the social emotional learning competencies in every unit. So these are things that did not exist previously in our Understanding by Design framework, so that many of these courses have not been updated since that time. The other thing I want to mention is we are incorporating our visible learning training into our curriculum development. So every unit will have multiple student learning intentions, so we can identify what the students are going to be learning. They will have success criteria, so the students understand when they have successfully understood and learned and achieved the goal of the day, which follows along with our desire to be assessment capable, visible learners. Identifying very specific student learning strategies, and continuing to identify more directly formative assessments, summative and benchmark assessments, and also not only aligning with activities and resources and making sure that those materials are current, but also suggested modifications for all stakeholder groups. So while there are some areas that are going to be a heavier lift because there are really robust new standards, particularly social studies, health PE, and some of the other areas, world language, the one thing I do want to mention is that every curriculum development phase that is ongoing throughout the course of this year is really going to be pretty comprehensive in terms of what needs to occur in order for it to be fully developed. There are very specific guidelines for the curriculum developers, and also areas of check-in through supervisors. We have PLC leaders who are going to be working collaboratively with them, and there are identified timelines for teachers to complete the work throughout the summer, so supervisors who are directly supervising have an opportunity to ensure that work is being accomplished in a timely manner, and feedback, which can be given through chalk, is also provided.
Thank you for all of that. Do any board members have any questions?
I have a question, two quick ones. So I looked at the standards that were updated in, was it June 2020 or September 20? Well, it was in 2020, and they have to be implemented September 2022.
Yes.
And math was not listed on there. I didn't see that, but I understand, is there a new math curriculum?
Yes.
But if there's a new math curriculum, what curriculum is being written? Does that make sense? I don't know. I mean, because ostensibly we purchased a curriculum.
Correct. So we purchased a program.
That's what I meant, a program which is...
Yeah, so really, essentially, when you develop curriculum, you really want to focus on the standards and the components of the framework, that those activities and resources would be an essential program or resources for instruction. So there is a complete overhaul that's taking place at elementary for math, particularly this year, because of updates to the standards, updates to the other components, and then also understanding and really analyzing the resources that are being provided in our new program, which is into math.
So even though I work in education, I always get it backwards, but so the curriculum, the program was purchased.
Correct.
Which has to be matched to the standards, which I would think it probably is close already, otherwise we wouldn't have purchased said program.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So they're laying out the scope and sequence, like what is that what's happening?
Scope and sequence, again, identifying items such as the unit rationale, the essential questions that would be, and the student learning intention. So those are not in existence in our existing math curriculum because that was part of UBD in the past. So those areas were not ever identified. Success criteria, all of those components that tie in our visible learning language that were not present prior to this.
Got it, okay. And then my second quick question is just, so if everyone is now switching to the CAR model, and use of chalk, will this create then an ongoing writing of curriculum, like during PLCs and such, so that it can be like kind of like, not updating in real time, but in a more, like we just completed this unit, let's reflect on this unit, kind of a loop?
Yes, absolutely. There is actually a reflection phase to the CAR framework. You're welcome.
Sorry. Just had a question about what will support look like for teachers over the summer as they're working on this, just knowing that this is going to be, some of them, it sounds like have heavier lifts than others, and
Sure.
some will be making changes. Particularly would love to hear, like the SEL incorporation is something that I think would be interesting, just to know a little bit more
That's
about.
a great question. There are actually a number of scaffolds put in place. One of them just starting with chalk as a new curriculum platform. So again, teacher training took place today. Chalk also has a number of embedded resources, including teacher tutorials. They have a live chat feature, so that will help any teacher who is getting into the throes of just the new technology aspect of this. Supervisors will be working alongside teachers throughout the summer to support them in anything that they need assistance with. So if they need assistance with tightening up their student learning intentions or understanding and making sure that their success criteria is clear. With the SEL competencies, we do have a pretty comprehensive SEL curriculum from elementary through high school. So that will really be the basis for our SEL work. But the SEL competencies are a component of the curriculum framework for CAR that allows us to make sure that we're kind of tying those together in particular. And I guess I should say too that one of the highlights of this is that we have assigned PLC leaders to associate with the curriculum development teams, which we think is a critical component based on the work that was accomplished this year. So they serve as a collaborative force alongside the curriculum development curriculum developers, particularly in some areas where we do have people who are teaching an elective course and they're the only one. So at least they have another resource to refer to, as opposed to like elementary math where you have multiple teachers working together on a pretty heavy lift anyway, but some of those courses are just, singletons, and along with their supervisors, the PLC leaders are going to assist them in that process.
So I've noticed that there are a lot of, social studies curriculums that need to be updated. Would this be the time when more work on the Amistad curriculum and integrating it within our social studies programs would be happening?
Yes, so we already have a pretty comprehensive resource regarding Amistad that we have developed over the course of the years and we continually add to. We have successfully used that resource as part of our CUSAC process. So, so far we've been in really good standing there. I do want to highlight that we did have 2 courses in particular at the high school level that were initially a half-year course and have been expanded this year to be full year. So they are African American history and psychology of the American experience. So you might recall from last year those were half year and they had a $375 stipend. Those courses were evolved over time, and then we decided to expand those to full year courses. So those 2 individuals have not yet been paid for there because they were understanding around January that this was going to be full year and they'll be paid at the end of this cycle. So that speaks to some of the work regarding Amistad and some of the areas specific to diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives that have also been outlined by the state.
Could you just tell us a little bit about what the plan is for the positions that we see on here that are currently open, namely, in particular, all of the health and PE ones, knowing that that's a really big lift of curriculum rewriting?
Yes, so I'm going to say that this is an area that I think we probably can understand. Twofold has, a bit of hesitation surrounding it. And first of all, in terms of understanding the role of health and PE in our districts, I think not just to Collingswood and Oakland specifically, but across the board, we are really trying to assist our health and PE teachers to understand that their pedagogy is so important for the overall health and well-being of our students. So updating our comprehensive health curriculum is going to be critical. There are obviously a number of new initiatives and goals there. And so I think that part of the hesitation is really, health and PE teachers recognize themselves as curriculum developers, and then also ensuring that we provide the utmost support for what's being expected by the health initiatives across the state. So I have reached out to the consortium in Camden. I'm part of the county curriculum consortium. And a few things. One, we're not the only district experiencing this. 2, I am potentially seeking a partnership with another school district who also has some availability perhaps to share some resources and has identified that there are some areas that they are struggling filling, so perhaps we can partner with that district specifically. And then also, most recently of today, I had received last week an information from a consultant regarding health and PE, someone who's been doing some ongoing work with Haddonfield, and I spoke to him this morning actually, and he's going to send me some further information. And one of the discussions we had is really kind of ramping up the knowledge base of our existing health and PE teachers, and then really providing that ongoing support for them to understand the shift in their standards, to see the shift and how that might fit into our framework, and then also to really have those intentional PLC meetings, and I'm hoping that we can provide some level of support for those teams through the process.
Thank you, Ms. McPartland. Does anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask? So thank you for taking the time to explain all of that to us. That was all that I had planned to discuss during committee of the whole. Is everyone good with that? Can I, so then I need a motion to exit committee of the whole.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, now, going back in order, we had gone over sections 5 through 7 while we were waiting for the presentations, so that brings us to section 8, which is,
Do we need to vote on the report of contracts?
no, we don't.
You don't need to
We
report
just,
on that.
We just needed the approval of minutes.
You don't need to vote.
So we are at our first opportunity for public comment. The purpose for this public comment section is to discuss items listed on the agenda. Additional, more general comments may be made later in the meeting. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators. The intent of public comment is to give the community opportunity to provide feedback to the board. We will be actively listening and taking notes so that we can take all that is being said into consideration. If appropriate, clarifying comments may be made at the end of the public comment section. For more detailed responses to concerns, communication may go out later in the week by the appropriate staff members or administrators, or be discussed by the board during future committee meetings. If anyone would like to make a public comment statement, please come up, state your name and address, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. No one is going to get up, so I'm going to assume that that is a no for this public comment section. Moving on to section 9, the superintendent's report. Dr. McDowell.
So, thank you. So full disclosure for those of us that are here with us, thank you for hanging in there with us. Lots on this agenda, especially as we close out moving into the summer. So thank you for being here. Section 9.01 is the enrollment report. May of 2021, enrollment was 2212. As of May 2022, enrollment is 2245 with the monthly and the 5-year reports attached. 9.02 is the emergency drill report for the month of May. That is also attached. 9.03 is the suspension report for the month of June, which is also attached. And 9.04 is the anti-bullying, so the HIB report for both May and June of 2022, which is also attached.
Thank you. Section 10, student reports, we do not have this evening because our student representatives have graduated and are enjoying their summer. So moving on to section 11, the business administrator board secretary report. Ms. Coleman.
All right, this evening I have item 11.01 is a listing of your May 2022 monthly transfers. Item 11.02 is your board secretary, treasurer, and cash reports. 11.03 is your student activity cash report. 11.04 is the food service cafeteria financial statement for the month of May. 11.05 is a listing of the purchase orders for June. Yes, we're still issuing purchase orders. And 11.06 is a listing of the warrants to be paid tomorrow morning upon approval.
Thank you. Section 12, Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee. Mr. Craig.
The Buildings, Grounds, and Finance Committee reviews all financial statements, purchase orders, and warrants on a monthly basis. The committee also reviews and approves all contracts with outside service providers and oversees all maintenance and capital improvement projects district-wide. 12.2 to 12.9 is Ms. Coleman's board secretary report approvals. 12.10 is a donation of, of $1,000 from a resident, Michael D. Marks, to the MD vocational program, which is an unrestricted grant benefiting our 18 to 21-year-old program in the district. 12.11 is contract with agreement with virtual drug AI screenings to do drug and alcohol screenings on campus. Sorry, is that on? Or did that get moved? You missed one. I missed the best one. Yeah, the most important one. Excuse me. 12. So that was 12.12, what I just read. 12.11 is a donation of a costume from Rasta and Pasta Costumes, which, if you have not seen the speech by Mr. Herman at graduation, it is a donation of the mummer costume. So very thankful and appreciative for this donation. 1213 is an agreement for one-on-one nursing services with Bayada for a student in the district. 1214 is contract with EDU Healthcare for instructional assistant staffing for the following school year. 1215 is agreement with Laurel Therapy to provide OT services for the ESY program. 1216 is a resolution with the Burlington County Insurance Pool Joint Insurance Fund, which I was assured I did not have to read the entire thing, but is there. 17 is capital and maintenance reserves, where if we have any excess, it will be going into capital maintenance reserves of up to $200,000. 18 is the Building Capacity Career Pathways Comprehensive Competitive Grant, and we are accepting for a total of $168,750. This will be used to hire an engineering teacher, provide some professional development opportunities, curriculum, and build out this program within our secondary school. 19 is updating our agreement with Borough of Oak Land for trash removal services. 1220 is textbook disposal. 21, special education placements, regular school year. And that's for our out of district placements, correct? Okay. And that is it for me. So seeking approval from 12:2 to 12:21.
A motion?
So moved.
And a second? Questions or comments from board members?
Thank you.
Correct. Mhm.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry?
Yes.
Ms. Mello? Yes. Ms. Rivera? Yes. Mrs. Savarino?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Section 13, the Curriculum Committee, Ms. Henry.
Items 13.02 through 13.04 would be field trips, but of course, school's out, so we have none to approve. 13.05 is out of districts and home instruction placements for students who are still finishing the school year. 13.06 seeks approval for the K-5 summer enrichment program, and 13.07 seeks approval for the grades 6 through 9 summer enrichment programs. 13.8 asks for approval for the middle school fall musical, which will be Matilda the Musical Junior, and 13.09 seeks approval of career technical education programs mission and vision statement. And that's all we're seeking for approval tonight, items 13.02 through 13.09.
So moved.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry?
Yes.
Ms. Mello?
Yes.
Ms. Rivera? Mrs. Savarino?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes, except those items marked with a double asterisk where I abstain.
And Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Moving on to Section 14, Personnel Committee. I am doing this one for Ms. Sheridan Celia today, and it is a long one, so bear with me. 14.01, Committee Goals. The Personnel Committee reviews all recommendations for teaching and staff employment, considers co-curricular employment, and considers all professional development opportunities for all staff members. Items 14.01 to 14.03 are retirements, and we thank Ms. Walker and Ms. DiMola for their service. Items 14.04 to 14.10 are resignations. Items 14.11 to 14.23 are various transfers within the district. Items 14.24 and 14.25 are NJFLA or FMLA, or unpaid leaves. 14.26 to 14.41 are the hiring of various teachers and other staff members. And now I've gotten ahead of myself, so give me a second to get back to my place. There we go. 14.45 to 49 are revised contracts, 14.50 is an addition of a teacher to, or an instructional assistant, to the 21-22 after-school acceleration program through the ESSER grants. 14.51 are the is an additional social work intern for the 22-23 school year. 14.52 to 14.54 are permanent substitutes at the elementary, middle, and high school. 14.55 are some CST stipends for over the summer. 14.56 is an elementary lunchtime playground assistant at Tatum. 14.57 the mental health support staff for the 22-23 school year. 14.58 are athletic head coaches. 14.59 and 60 are middle school and high school athletic EDP stipends. 14.61 are the marching band volunteers for the 22-23 school year. 14.62 is a student-teacher practicum, or 2 student-teacher practicum placements in occupational therapy and social work. 14.63 is approving a principal certification internship for Ms. Huff under the direction of Mr. Kulak at Tatum. 14.64 is just the approval of one staff member's child for tuition-free education at the high school. 14.65 through 68, I believe, right, 68 are various curriculum development stipends for elementary, middle, high school, and district curriculum development. 14.69 is a revision to the ESY summer program, or some revisions to the ESY summer program. 14.70 are 2022 CST and related summer services staff. 14.71 is approving 2 people to conduct interns to conduct summer evaluations. 14.72 are to the approval to pay those that need special education and general education staff to attend IEP meetings over the summer. 14.73 are nursing summer hours. 14.74 is the summer program staff, or addition of Mr. Lurcha for the summer program staff for this year. 14.75 is are additional teachers and aides for the elementary summer accelerated learning camps. 14.76 are secondary additions to the staff for the summer learning camp. And 14.77 is summer hours for the Oakland CST and related services positions. 14.78 is the recommendation to approve our summer literacy coach to do some student screenings as needed. 14.79 is the approval of Ms. Ostroff to serve as the I don't know how Chris does this. This is long. To serve as the secretary for the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum as needed. 14.80 are the AED the people who will be participating in AED training. 14.81 are some more buildings and grounds summer workers. 14.82 is to approve Dr. McDowell to continue to offer employment contracts to successful candidates with notification to take place at the next public board meeting, so he can hire over the summer. 14.83 is the final approval of the contract for the assistant to the superintendent for business and operations, Ms. Coleman. 14.84 are some more substitutes and tutors added to our list. 14.85 is a travel expense form. 14.86 is the approval of the Collingswood Principals and Supervisors Association agreement. And that brings us to my asking for approval for items 14.02 to 14.86. Before I do that, is that when I'm doing these? Okay, just checking. So now I have a couple of motions to make. So first, I'm going to make a motion to amend item 14.58 to read only approval of the fall head coaches, athletic coaches. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Do we need to do a roll call or all in favor?
All in favor.
All in favor? Okay. Then I also would like to make a motion to table the items on section 4.58, which is the winter and spring athletic coaches for the time being. So I'm tabling the spring and winter athletic coaches. Is there a motion to table that? And a second? All in favor? Okay. Next, I have a motion to amend and add to items 14.65, 66, and 68, language that we had previously discussed that reads, Ms. McPartland will coordinate with teachers to provide a rationale for the need for additional curriculum development that falls outside the scope of what a classroom teacher does to refresh their courses each year for each of the courses listed. Included in this rationale will be updates to the standards that necessitated that new curriculum to be written, with then the understanding that there will be an update by Ms. McPartland at the August meeting. And I have that for Beth Ann. So is there a motion to amend those three agenda items with that language? And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With all of that being said, now I'm going back and going to ask for a motion to approve items 14.02 to 14.86. Second? Any questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Sarah. Right, they applied for these transfers to various positions, right? Yeah.
Right, so through our budget development process, we identified additional opportunities for targeted intervention and tiered levels of support for students with an emphasis on learning acceleration. We posted the positions, and a lot of our positions were internal transfers based on what they believed would be a better fit for them for the 22-23 school year.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor? Yes. Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry? Yes. Ms. Mello? Yes. Ms. Rivera? Yes. Mrs. Savarino?
Yes, except for item 14.45, where I abstain.
Mr. Stotts?
I'm going to abstain from all items on section 14. There's quite a number of items I don't think I have enough information to make a good decision on, so rather than try and pick out which of the 86 items I have questions on, I'll abstain from all of them.
Okay. Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Moving on to section 15, Policy and Regulations Committee, Ms. Savarino.
Okay, I'm catching up to you. Give me one sec. Sorry, okay. The Policy and Regulations Committee reviews all updates and changes of district policies and regulations. So we have two policies up for a first read. The class rank policy, which is 5430, and dress and grooming, which is 5511. With the dress and grooming one, we just cleaned up the language a little bit, but because we revised the language at all, it has to go back to a first read. So both of those are up for a first read. There are no regulations at this time, so I'm seeking approval of 15.02.
Is there a motion for 1502? And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments from board members? Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry? Ms. Mello? Ms. Rivera? Mrs. Severino?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
I'm going to vote no. I have no problem with 5430. I'm okay with that, but I don't agree with 5511, so I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Mrs. Caden?
Yes. Moving on to section 16, miscellaneous. You will see in 1601 is the HIB report from the previous month, and then a job description in 1602 for a school climate officer, which, correct me if I'm wrong there, but it is, that job description is then for our, what was formerly known as our school security staff, correct?
Yes.
So it's not hiring new positions, it's just rewording their job description.
So what we did was we just reaffirmed the roles and responsibilities that they were already doing. The concept of a security officer. So our school climate officers are each retired law enforcement professionals. They do a lot more than just security. So we wanted an accurate job description to reflect their full scope of their duties, with an emphasis on building relationships with students to be embedded in their formal job description.
Thank you. And then 16.03 is a sidebar agreement, a second sidebar agreement with our Teachers Association, the CEA, regarding summer staffing hours. This, we negotiated a higher rate to more appropriately compensate them for summer hours. So we need approval for item 16.01 to 16.03. Is there a motion to approve these items? And a second? Questions or comments from board members?
I have a question about the school climate officer job description. Is this from like a template or somewhere else, or where did the qualifications come from?
It was similar to the current positions that they hold. We just added the additional language based on the expanded role that they'll be taking on for 22-23.
Just reading through it, it's interesting to me that there seems to be very subjective wording, like demonstrate the ability to communicate effectively in English, both orally and in writing, using proper grammar and vocabulary, and things like evidence of successful experience working with students. Those things to me aren't very well defined and seem kind of, I guess, vague and bizarre. Is kind of my point, especially the one with like the piece about English. So just mentioning that.
So these positions, so we heard earlier about the HIB reports and the investigations. So they actually conduct the HIB reports and the investigations. Some were able to actually do the investigations in English and in Spanish, fully translated. So that was language that was already embedded in their current role. So we didn't remove it. They also are responsible for reports with the court system. So formal reports have to be issued within the court system as well as our law enforcement partners. So that literacy component, it just needed to be explicit. So it was there, and we just never removed it.
And we're going to have a question too on that. This is a revised job description for the security people that we already have, or this is a new description for another person that we're planning to hire? Question mark.
It's a revised job description for schools staff we already have.
For the existing staff?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I actually meant to ask this earlier. Did we ever figure out why the previous month's HIP reports are always presented in the current board meetings? Are they just, is it just like an updated version? Is that why?
So generally, when the board meetings occur, we're still in the middle of that month.
So it's, okay.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Thanks.
Put your mic on.
Do we vote and/or review all updated job descriptions? Or why was this one selected to be presented to us?
Since I've been doing it, I bring any revisions to the job descriptions to the board.
Okay.
Because on the bottom of every job description should have a date that it was approved or by the board. So if you go online under, I think it's under employment, there's a listing of all our job descriptions. On the very bottom, it should have the date that the most recent job description was reviewed and approved by the board.
Okay, because I feel like we've done a lot of restructuring, and I don't remember seeing like a lot of new job descriptions, so this kind of just made me wonder about the rest of them.
You'll be seeing more in August.
Well,
Yeah,
and
we're
we
meeting
have-
with the board
there
office
have been
staff
quite a few job
tomorrow, and
descriptions,
yeah, we're
actually.
doing it.
I think
I
they
did
were
level one text, I think I did last
Right.
year.
I think some of them have been more bunched together
Yeah.
on a larger document instead of just
Okay.
one standalone, and that might be why it wasn't as noticeable, but
Okay.
we've definitely had quite a few of those this year, I think.
All right, thanks.
When we get these in the future, could they reference as revised job descriptions rather than just job descriptions? Correct. Yes, correct.
I guess. Also curious why this isn't part of the personnel committee, and it's on the miscellaneous section. Sorry.
Why is this on the miscellaneous section and not under personnel? I don't know, it's always been that way. I think it's a structure of this, but we can look into it. Like, I think it's a structure of the school
The
board
issues where
agenda.
they've always put these
Yeah,
kind of,
the board
these
docs, exactly,
one-off
yeah.
strange items, yeah.
Right, particularly because they're not being hired. We're not approving a certain person. Okay, so is there a motion to approve item 6? We already did that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor? Yes. Mr. Chu?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Henry? Yes. Ms. Mello? Yes. Ms. Rivera? Yes. Mrs. Severino?
Yes.
Mr. Stotts?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaden?
Yes. Section 17 is the second opportunity for public comment. Everyone has been sitting here for the entire time, so I'm not going to read my entire statement, but just remind everyone that this is the opportunity to make any comment, items on the agenda or not. The public is reminded that attempts to resolve all concerns and complaints should first go through appropriate staff members and administrators, and that we will be actively listening and taking notes, and if appropriate, we will make clarifying comments at the end. If anyone has something that they would like to come and say, they can stand, state their name and address, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Hi, Jen Huang, 741 Park Avenue. I am a parent of 2 high school students. One is a rising junior, one is a rising senior. And I'm here tonight because the board deals with hiring. And so this is a question I would normally just address at the high school. But as you know, the Latin teacher has left. And we've talked a lot about Latin in this room in the last few months. And one of the questions that I hear my kids talking about and their peers talking about is there going to be Latin at the high school next year? And I know this is a relatively new piece of information, but it looks like it's actually a known deal if we're not developing curricular standards for Latin 1 and 2. And I ask this, I think there has been a lot of thought about should this go through, should this not go through in terms of Latin continuing. I think that is one question. And there was a commitment that we were going to stand by our world language programs. And if that decision, because of staff leaving, is no longer being honored, I think that is one separate issue we need to think about, is are we trying to maintain the program? I think the other question, and actually the reason I came here tonight, is because if this is happening or not, our students deserve to know. So right now, you have a number of students who signed up to take Latin, who don't know if they are able to take Latin in the fall. because they don't know if there'll be a teacher. And I think right now the answers are, we've decided we're not filling the position, in which case that needs to be communicated to students so they can decide whether they're switching languages, whether they're taking something else. Or we are actively looking to fill the position, which may or may not happen, but students then can say, okay, I'm gonna hold and try to figure out if this is gonna happen. Or we don't know yet. But I think one of those three things deserves to be messaged out to the parents and students. Because right now, the students are speculating, and after all of the conversations we've had about world languages, I really feel like this is a moment that we can be transparent about what is actually going on. And if we don't know, saying we don't know is okay, but people deserve to understand what is happening. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie Cunning, and I live at 108 Crestmont Terrace. I'm here with my husband, Sean Cunning. We're new to the school district, and I just wanted to introduce ourselves and say that we're excited. We have 2 young boys that are just starting in the school system, so we're excited, and we're willing to help in any way we can. So thank you for all your service throughout the year. We appreciate it. We know it's a job that doesn't get a lot of thanks, so we're appreciative, and we're looking forward to the fall.
I'm Dan Smith. I'm from 225 Lincoln Avenue. I wanted to talk today about the STEM camps, the enrichment camps in August that the district is running. This is a fantastic program. My son got just so much out of it last year. I can't even describe how much he got out of it. The issue is that this year, while there was some really ambitious planning, I'm noticing some issues with the execution, and the most notably, the signups. On April 14th, we got emailed out an interest survey, presumably which told the district exactly how much interest there was in this program. We didn't hear anything else about it until May 31st, at which point we get an unexpected email that says that we need to register our kids for the camp ASAP and that there are only 40 spots per grade level. Obviously, this turned the registration into like a race, only without a get ready or get set. What's more troubling is the socioeconomic implications of distributing registration spots like this. Who's more likely to be checking their emails frequently? It's parents with white-collar jobs. So my wife got the email when it was sent. My kids got their spots. What I'm hearing a lot about, though, is families who did miss out on these spots. And I think we should know the following. The first is how many children in each grade ended up on the wait list. The second is if there was more interest than available resources, why wasn't that communicated earlier? The third is what particular resources are limiting you to 40 children per grade? And the last is whether you considered other options to expand the number of spots. Thank you.
Just giving anyone a minute to stand up, but it doesn't look like anyone is. I just wanted to speak to 2 points that were made. First, just to anyone that stayed this long to make a public comment. Thanks for your dedication for doing that. To the first point about any personnel shifts that are made, we are under the constraints of certain timelines of when we are officially given that information, and while behind the scenes planning may be taking place, we need to wait for certain information before we can then begin sharing with the community what that plan is. But please be rest assured that those plans are being made, even if they're not being shared immediately, because we need to work within certain timelines. So appreciate the concerns. We are aware of them, but also are a little bit stuck at the moment. And as far as the enrichment camps, I just wanted to mention that there is we've talked a lot today about mental health and teacher mental health, and everybody's feeling like they need a break, and so finding staff to fill the need of and the desire of all of the students in Collingswood and Oakland to participate in these summer programs was a bit of a challenge, and I think we're learning about better ways to communicate, but we are also in the future looking for other opportunities to partner with, for instance, our after-school program that we'll be using in the fall to see about offering more summer opportunities, because we are very aware, some of us with young children of our own that are looking for summer camp opportunities, that there's a real need for that in the district, and also aware of finding ways to make the signups for all of those things as equitable as possible. So thanks for bringing all of that to our attention as well. Okay, so with all of that being said, thanks to everyone for staying for this whole time. We are not going to actually officially adjourn our meeting because we do need to go into executive session, but we are going to say goodbye to all of you for that reason. So at this time, I'm not going to make the motion until I'm going to give everyone the opportunity to leave, correct? What am I doing? Okay. Okay, so we're going to go into executive session because we need to have some discussions about some personnel issues and facility issues. So we thank you all very much for your time, and have a good night. And have a great summer.